situation that we had to deal with in terms of topographic issues, in particular about geological issues, and then geographically in the sense of, especially because of water, stormwater situations, which we do have in Istanbul quite a bit, and we do see certain areas that are just primarily used to drain for stormwater drainage, and that particular property was one of them. We had to deal with also the research in regards to all the different departments who are already developing along the new motorways certain new developments and try to use certain particular properties. And therefore, there we had the situation, we had to create an artificial river in order to really just compensate for the stormwater drainage situation of the neighboring areas, because the topography of Istanbul's surrounding area in the west, in the European area, is that we have a very hilly area, and the valleys are really accumulating in the fall and with a lot of the rainfall. So therefore, in order to make that happen, we had to deal with really changing topography in order to start developing properties that are suitable to build various projects. We had to deal in particular, and now we are getting, this project started actually with a private entrepreneur, a local private bank owner, so to speak, who was working together with certain agencies and certain parts of the government, but did fail to really be able to engage the government to the extent that we would have initially a very solid funding in order to go forward with this entire project. Because obviously the internal infrastructure and the topographical changes, as well as all the different types of medias that have to be brought in, is a very complex and a very costly aspect in a project like that. And so therefore the agencies that are involved, which is named TOKI, is a government agency that provides for social housing, for low and middle income housing, as well as for cultural projects, as well as for certain particular infrastructural micro-location developments. So therefore the development called for investors upon a completion that certain parcels could be really sold out to co-investors and co-developers to also finance the micro infrastructure. That was part of the government that we should have had that also implemented and also included in the cost of the land. So obviously, given that we are dealing with a cultural situation where you have, of course, we know the government is pro-Western or Western EU, as well as we do have the Islamic traditions and the values and all of these aspects, so that you have clearly the way that housing is being distributed right now in Istanbul is that you have Turkey really giving away a lot of housing projects per se. So now to come into play and balance that off in order to have investors for retail, for commercial, for hospital, for cultural centers is very difficult, and it has proven that it is only possible with government support. And that is where the government support started to stall. And the private sector does not pick up to that because of the crisis that we had encountered in 2009. So we had a certain stallment of this project. However, Turkey, being a government agency or a government department, is allowed that the owners of this property were three brothers. Two of them were really pro-Western and pro-private investment, and one allowed clearly for the government to be involved. So he donated, and that is the way the financing has worked. He's giving his land to Turkey, and Turkey will, in return, at the end of the day, will reimburse him with a few apartments or certain buildings. So now Turkey is starting not using a master plan that is to be implemented. It is becoming the same patchwork that we have seen in the areas going around, where you have only housing that has no schools, no kindergarten, very little shopping for daily supply, so that you just contribute with this development to the overload of the existing infrastructure that is there, hoping that the new trusses of the new highway will actually then at one point connect and will just make the accessibility of this entire area more possible and more feasible and less problematic. So therefore I see very often there that governments and local authorities we tried to really, let me put it this way, we had tried really to work with local authorities, because it is the biggest mistake one could ever do, obviously, is that we come to a city like Istanbul from New York, saying we know how this works and how that has to be done. We obviously go ahead and work really closely with the local authorities and try to understand the cultural background, try to understand how financing systems work there, because you don't have yet EU guarantees that you can get certain guarantees or state bonds that you can work for certain particular project. It is very difficult. So therefore, all in all, I have only encountered a lot of hurdles, a lot of problems, a lot of change, of course. I have seen money being spent and being just like practically thrown out the window, and at the same time, in certain parts, in certain areas, very constructive investment. And I can only say anyone working in foreign cultures to that extent, if it is not backed in financing by the government or by an investor who has very strong ties politically and economically in a city like Istanbul or in areas like that, I do believe that it is very important to work together with local companies, which we have been doing in all these different research aspects of the necessity in order to start putting a project like that together. So ultimately, I am about done, and I mean there's certainly a lot more things that have contributed over the years to a project like that, but I can only say it is a challenge, but it is very, very interesting and very rewarding, by the way. Thank you very much.
So, I would like to thank all the speakers that they were so kind and kept the minutes which I brutally prescribed to them. So we have enough time for a discussion, and we should really end in around latest by 20 minutes, because I need a coffee break and we have to go then to the next item. So the first, do you have to, within the panel, do you want to ask, because you have different elements? Yes?
Just one remark.
Yes, please, you have the floor.
Just one remark to the so-called concession projects. I just wanted to mention that there is at present really not enough space. It's solely focused on the Balkan area, with one exception about in Croatia, but the other ones, what we have been working out as a competitor as well, they just collapsed. We already had a signed contract with 1.8 billion euros in Serbia, signed already contract, but unfortunately due to governmental changes, this contract was not fulfilled, and we are still now facing a result in front of ICC in Paris. That's what I want to make. It's different from Holland, from Ireland, from Poland, and so on, because these are EU members. So I just wanted to focus this sentence on the Balkan area, which you have the same experience. This is just a small remark.
Thank you very much. And ICC takes always a long time to make a decision. Now, if we go to the questions, please just say your name and your affiliation when you put the question to the panel, and then say to whom you want to put the question. The floor is open. Who would like the floor? Yes, please. The gentleman behind.
Yes, hi. Ishan Ryan from Head of Asia Pacific at Columbus Organization. This question is sort of for the whole panel, but I think Mr. Miko mentioned it earlier. You mentioned something about PPP being a very small section still. At the moment, everyone seems to be talking about PPP as a new solution for financing projects in developing countries and markets. Do you really see that, because it's a very complex system and it takes a long time to implement with very different parties, do you see that really as taking off as a proper tool to finance infrastructure projects in the future, or is it just still a catchword for a while and then there'll be other more efficient methods in the future?
Just, yes, it is a proper way for sure. It will really bring all governments, if they are just on the way to a prosperous development or already reached this position, it will help to reduce the budget. It will create private initiatives which always have a much higher finance security, always less time in construction, and always the security over the concession period that this will really work because it's a non-recourse financing based project, and therefore it has a future, but it needs time for certain countries.
The next question, please.
My name is Manfred Tiche from Business Culture and Sport. The question goes to Alpine as well as to Starhawk. You speak a lot of financing from European Union to motorways and mainly to Poland. Okay, I'm not a specialist of Poland, but I'm wondering that the European Union is spending so much money in developing motorways and not in developing high-speed railways, not the normal railways we know at the moment, but why do they spend so much money in motorways and not in high-speed railways? It will be much more faster and much more efficient than at the moment with these motorways.
But, please.
First of all, I can say that there seem to be very powerful lobbies in Brussels which support the truck industry. So this is a given fact, and it's a reality in our society. I would not comment on this. Secondly, I can say that railway concessions or PPP projects have no successful track record in Europe. It began in the UK, where all that kind of privatization did not work. And I just can say that we Starhawk are not highly interested in railway infrastructure projects, other than projects which are tendered as cash projects without any concession or operation or whatever risks. The operation of railway networks is a different kind of business than compared to the operation of road networks. As far as I know, the investment into road network has the highest macroeconomic multiplier, and this might be one of the reasons in order to support the local economy the most, that European community may be motivated by the truck industry or transportation industry to support road networks first.
I give an additional remark. The difference is not so big as you mentioned. The difference in between these investments in roads in general, motorways, highways, and small roads, and in between rail tracks is only that the investments will be 25% less. But first of all, not to do it in new railway tracks, in the renewal and reconstruction, because we don't forget that those rail tracks which are in these SEE countries, not in the EU already member countries,